Hi, in this video we're gonna continue working on how to display values from TinyDB to the interface with Appinventor. So what I did, the things that I've changed since the previous video, well, I've changed a little bit the UI so that the spacing looks a bit better. I've added a button and I've added a notifier. So now the user, whenever he or she would click the button show next values, then more than 3 values essentially would appear in the database. The logic behind the application is that I'm going to shift the values from, so we have labels 3 and 4 displaying the first row of the database. What I'm going to do, I'm going to shift the values from label 5 to label 3, from label 6 to label 4, and from label 7 to label 5, from label 8 to label 6. In that way, I free up labels 7 and 8, and then we're gonna show the next value that exists in the database. So let's go ahead and do that first. So what I mentioned, the first thing that I want to do is to free up the last 2 labels. So for that reason, I would need to shift labels 5 and 6 to labels 3 and 4. So now that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm taking the text from label 5, which is the second row in my database, and I'm shifting it, I'm inserting it in label 3, and I'm gonna also shift label 6 to label 4. The same thing I would need to do with labels then 7 and 8. So label 7 is gonna then shift to label 5, and label 8 is gonna shift to label 6. So essentially what I've done now, I have freed up labels 7 and 8 to insert new data from the database. So now that we have cleared up label 6 and 7, we can insert values, the next values from the database. I forgot to mention that I have also initialized now a global variable called with the name of current tag, which is going to start from position 4 in the database. Since we already had 3 labels, now obviously we need to move to the 4th position in order to get the 4th row from the database. So we're gonna duplicate this block, and instead of then putting a label in a label 7, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a value from the database. For that reason, I need to move to the TinyDB component, and this is the get value procedure. And as I mentioned before, since we displayed the first 3 values previously, then we need to display the 4th value, and for that reason we're going to use the current tag variable. Now remember that the value actually that I have inserted in the database is a list, so therefore I need to select, and the first item in that list is the login. So the first item is going to be the login, which is going to be displayed in label 7, whereas the second item in that list in my database, so with index 2, is going to be displayed in label 8. Now let's check the emulator. So the emulator has now started up, and what I forgot to mention is that I have inserted some more values in the database. So whenever I click show next values, what happened is the content that were in labels 7 and 8 moved up in labels 5 and 6, and whatever was in labels 5 and 6 moved up in labels 3 and 4. Now if I continue clicking on the button, I'm actually gonna see that the same value that was inserted in row 4 in the database displays in in my labels. So that's a mistake, and that's because I forgot to actually increase the value of the current tag. So what I needed to do is, after I have displayed properly the values, I will need to increase the value of current tag from whatever that value was, which is initially 4. I will need to increase it by 1. So initially it would be 4 plus 1. It would go to the 5th position. So I'm going to restart the emulator. So the emulator now is restarted, and as you can see now, what's going to happen when I'm going to click the button, the values are going to shift up, and the first value is obviously going to disappear. So Javed Khan is going to go to the place of Rob Verhagen. Paul is going to go to the place of Javed, and the next value, which is in the database, is going to replace Paul. So this is what exactly happened. Now the global current tag increased by 1, so it's going to show the 5th value in the database, which is George. And that's the way to actually display the values in the database. Now there is one slight improvement that we can do. As you can see, I clicked the button several times, and what has happened is that George is the last value in the database. So we would need to check whether we have reached the end of the database and show an appropriate message to the user. So that's what we're going to do in the next video.